Welcome back to Connected Tech Talks, and with the website refresh that brought us the brand new iPhone SE comes the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pros that was supposed to come out in May. And if you hadn't noticed, it's not yet May. So, yeah, let's talk about it. So to start this off, I'm not a big iPad fan. I don't have an iPad Pro. I won't be using the Magic Keyboard. Anyway, I'm not going to be using this new iPad Pro, and I'm not going to be using the Magic Keyboard, but I do think the Magic Keyboard is kind of cool, but there's also some concerns I have about it. So I wanted to just talk about those because there are other things I could be talking about, but I think the Magic Keyboard is an interesting topic. So here's the problem. There used to be a smart folio keyboard for the iPad Pros, or actually they're still sold. They have the old mushy keys, they don't have a trackpad, and they don't have an adjustable view like the new Magic Keyboard does for the iPad Pros. It's basically just a case with a keyboard that flips out and you can type on it and then fold it back up, and then it acts as a case for the front and back of the iPad. But you can also fold the keyboard behind the iPad and hold it just as a normal tablet, use the Apple Pencil, take notes, or whatever it is that you need to do. And I find that the new Magic Keyboard, while improving on the old Smart Keyboard in a lot of ways, kind of takes away from the old Smart Keyboard in a lot of ways. So you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons of both of these keyboards in order to make a decision that's going to be good for your use. So this new Magic Keyboard is actually the same style of keys as the new MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro 16-inch. So thankfully, it's not using the butterfly keyboard, but it's using this new scissor switch design that Apple has made that is more stable than the old scissor switches, but not as unreliable as the butterfly switches. This new Magic Keyboard has the same stability of the butterfly keyboards and the same reliability of the old scissor switch design. Then I'm sure it'll be keys that I like. So that's a good thing about the new Magic Keyboard. Another good thing is that there's a trackpad. It takes Apple one step closer to, having an all-in-one design with the iPad Pro that can act as a laptop and just a tablet at the same time. Something that I've grown accustomed to with my MacBook Pro is how big the trackpad is. It's just phenomenal. It's not an actual button. It's just like 3D press on the old iPhones, RIP 3D touch, especially with all of the gestures that macOS utilizes. So it's nice to have room for your fingers, and there's just so much room to play with. A keyboard only needs to be a certain size, so why not just make the trackpad take up more space? I think the trackpad is just great. But on these new iPad Pro keyboards, you're going to see that the trackpad is tiny. And first hands-on looks with these iPad Magic keyboards, I've seen that 3 fingers basically takes up the whole trackpad. So if you're doing gestures, which you need 3 fingers to swipe up, iOS is largely based on gestures on both the iPhone and the iPad. So if you're trying to do gestures with 3 fingers on that iPad, you're kind of going to be cramped, at least from what I've seen. So that's my first critique. I get they want the case to be the same size as the iPad. It would be awkward if the trackpad was bigger and then the keyboard is actually bigger than the device itself. And I'm sure Apple has thought about that, so it's probably fine, but I just, I think it should be bigger. Another thing about this Magic Keyboard is that it has USB-C charging pass-through. So you have the standard USB-C port on the iPad Pro, and when you attach this keyboard via Smart Connector, so that it's not actually even taking up the USB-C port, you also get another USB-C port on the keyboard that can charge the iPad when they're connected. So you still have the port on the actual iPad itself. I think there's a missed opportunity here. There should be 2. There's a certain spot on the keyboard where the USB-C port is. I think there should be another one on the other side because the iPad desperately needs more ports and it only has one USB-C port. And those ports only support charging. If these ports could support data pass-through, that would be great. You could have 3 data ports on your iPad with this case added, and the iPad needs more than one USB-C port. Even MacBook Airs have 2, and this new iPad, and both of those are data transfer, obviously, but on the iPad Pro, you only have 1 data transfer with the possibility of paying $300 to $350 for another charging port. That's another thing, the cost of this keyboard. If you're going to be looking at the iPad Pro as a replacement for something like the MacBook Air, then you're going to be needing the keyboard. And when you buy the keyboard, and if you get the 13-inch iPad Pro, then it starts to cost even more than the MacBook Air. Anyway, this is a critique of the Magic Keyboard after all, not the iPad Pro. I will be critiquing the iPad Pro sooner or later. I'm going to be working on that. But right now, just the Magic Keyboard. With the new iPad Pro, since the Magic Keyboard actually has two hinges, it allows you to have much more control over the viewing angles. Again, the Magic Keyboard is serving as a case for this iPad, so when you open it up, it folds open a little, and then you have another hinge to play with that will basically vary the viewing angle from this to this. Hello, editing me here. Another thing that I saw, MKBHD note, which he actually has the product now, he said that it's very top heavy. So, but with the iPad Pro, obviously there is no default keyboard, so all of the computer is actually in the display. So when you're using the Magic Keyboard, all of the weight is up here on the top, and there's very little weight on the actual keyboard. Even though the keyboard itself is actually heavier than the iPad, the weight distribution still doesn't work because a lot of the weight is up here instead of down here. With a laptop, you can open and close very easily with one finger even, but on the iPad Pro, you actually can't even open it that easily because so much weight is on the top versus the bottom. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that. It's really easy to attach the Magic Keyboard to the iPad, or the iPad to the Magic Keyboard, I guess. You just place it on there, it magnetically connects, like I said, and it's good to go. But the main problem I have with the Magic Keyboard is that you can't fold the keyboard behind the iPad like you can with the Smart Keyboard. Which means if you want to just take notes on your iPad, you just want to write on it with the Apple Pencil, you just want to play games on it or something without the keyboard getting in your way, there's no good way to do that without having to take off the iPad from your case. Which any case that you have to take your device out of to use the device as it was intended to be used, that's just kind of weird to me. You take your iPad off of the keyboard, which is also your case, by the way, so your iPad no longer has a case, and then you have to write on it. And then when you want to walk away or something, you have to also pick up the Magic Keyboard, which means you also have to reattach the iPad, fold it back up, and then carry it away. Whereas with the Smart Connector, I feel it was much more fluid. You could just fold the keyboard behind the iPad, do whatever you need to do, fold it back around, and then walk away, and there's no hassle. I think that you should be able to go from complete laptop mode to complete tablet mode as easily as you can with the Smart Keyboard. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Magic Keyboard for the new iPad Pros. I think it's overall a good product, but there's some things that just make me wonder, what is Apple trying to accomplish with the new iPad Pros? Like, why can't they just make the hinge go all the way around? Then you can use it the way you used to use the Smart Keyboard. I don't know. But I'm just confused a little bit. I think personally, if I were to ever use an iPad Pro, I would want to be able to use it as a tablet sometimes and as a laptop sometimes. And for that reason, I would go for the Smart Keyboard because it's just so much more versatile, even though it has less viewing angles and that it doesn't have the trackpad. I don't know. I think it's kind of a weird situation, so tell me what you think. As always, stay connected and stay inside.